All right, let's take up the answer to question B. So again, the perimeter is going to be 2 times one side. I'll just call one of the sides A plus 2 times the other side. And I'll call the other side B. Now, just like before, I can substitute in the equations for A and B. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, I can do some distributing. So I have this 2 that's in front of my bracketed terms. So I'm going to distribute it to both of those terms. And then I also have a 2 here that can be distributed to both of those terms. So 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times negative 2. So remember, when you have a positive number times a negative number, your answer should be negative. I can identify my like terms. I can group up my like terms. And then I can simplify. And there we go. There's an equation for the perimeter of shape B. Determine the perimeter of each figure above if x is equal to 3 centimeters. So I actually, you know what? What did I get for the perimeter of this shape here? It looks like I made a mistake in A. So let's just go back and check equation A. It says, oh yes, you see it? 4x plus 10x plus 6 plus 10. I wrote that my perimeter was 10x plus 10. My perimeter should actually be 10x plus 16. So I knew something was off about that. All right, good that we fixed it. So the perimeter of shape A is 10x plus 16. So let's find what the perimeter is equal to when x is equal to 3 centimeters. So just like I did, or just like I substituted in the equation for B, because I knew it, I can go ahead and substitute in this value of x into my perimeter equation. So let's do that. I'm going to substitute in an x value of 3 to figure out what my perimeter is when x is equal to 3 centimeters. 10 times 3 is 30. And then 30 plus 16 is 46. So therefore, the perimeter of shape A is 46 centimeters. And whenever you're doing word problems, always make sure you conclude with a therefore statement. Let's do the perimeter of B. So the equation for the perimeter of B was given by this equation, 12x minus 2. Let's find the perimeter when x is equal to 3 centimeters. So just like the previous one, I'm going to substitute in a value of 3 centimeters for x, and I want to find what the perimeter is when x is equal to 3 centimeters. 12 times 3 is 36, and 36 minus 2 is 34. Therefore, the perimeter of shape B is 34 centimeters. Perfection. Let's keep going. So let me scroll down. Now, this is where we get to a really important topic. Subtracting is the same thing. Well, you know what? I want to get to this in 1 second, but you remember how I was saying before that if we have something in front of our brackets, we typically distribute it? Now, remember, I had, for example, here, a 2 in front of these brackets, and I had to distribute it to each term. So it's the same thing if you have a negative sign. So what's actually going on in a scenario like this is I have a positive, but then I have a negative 1 in front of my brackets. Now remember, a positive times a negative is going to give you a negative number overall. And we don't show the 1 because it doesn't actually, well, it doesn't have to be shown. 1 times any number is just going to be whatever that number is. So if I put a 1 in front of these brackets, it doesn't change anything. Now just bear with me for 1 sec. I can do that same distributive thing that I did before, right? And so negative 1 times negative x squared is just going to be positive x squared. Negative 1 times negative 2x is going to be positive 2x. And negative 1 times positive 1 is going to give you minus 1. So then I can get rid of the brackets on this term. And then I can identify my like terms. I can group them up. And I can simplify. Now, I know a lot of students typically have a hard time understanding this conceptually because it's kind of weird. It's like, why am I distributing a negative sign? So I have a trick for you guys, and we talked about this trick in class. And I remember one of our colleagues in the classroom asked us, well, what's kind of going on? Well, what I showed you is actually what's going on behind the scenes. But the shortcut, or I don't want to call it a shortcut, but just an easier way of thinking about it is that subtracting is the same thing as adding the opposite. So let's do that. Let's add the opposite. Now this method personally is easier to understand. All you got to do is, well, this stays the same. And you see here how I'm subtracting? Well, they tell me subtracting is the same thing as adding the opposite of each one of these terms. So the opposite of negative x squared is positive x squared. The opposite of negative 2x is positive 2x. And the opposite of positive 1 is negative 1. So if I get rid of my brackets, and then I identify my like terms, let's group up my like terms. And let's simplify. I get the same answer as what I got before. So the way I showed you initially is kind of what's going on behind the scenes. If you don't really care about what's going on behind the scenes, just remember that if you have a negative sign in front of your brackets, change it to a positive sign so that you're adding, and then inside of your brackets, just put the opposite of each one of the terms that you originally had. Let's simplify this. So I'm going to keep my first set of bracketed terms the same. And now I notice that I have a negative sign in front of my second bracket. So I'm actually going to add the opposite of each one of these terms. I think this is actually the same as this example here, except we were supposed to use algebra tiles and we didn't. So you know what? Let me skip this one. Forget about the algebra tiles, and let's just do some examples with pen and paper here. So in this one, I'm going to keep my first bracketed term the same. I see that I have a negative sign in front of my second bracket, so I could either distribute it or I could add the opposite of each one of my terms. So instead of 4x, I put negative 4x. Instead of negative 2, I put positive 2. Now I can remove my brackets. I can identify my like terms. I can group up my like terms, and I can simplify. So 3x minus 4x is minus 1x, and negative 5 plus 2 is minus 3. So why don't you guys try B, C, D, and E, and I'll take these up in our next video.